Okay, welcome back. Late September 1855. All the moves that we had planned in late August, or rather early September, I beg your pardon, have come to pass. Omar Pasha is now positioned in Niš. Abdülkerim Nadir in Kosovo, both are activated, and we had a couple of relatively small engagements. Omar Pasha engaged what looked like a kind of an army corps size force, destroyed a few elements, and defeated them, inflicted 5,000 casualties or 4,500, took 800 casualties, and also took 3,400 prisoners. Definitely in the win camp. Really good news. No complaints there. Not any kind of colossal engagement with any large Austrian forces. There is now a large Austrian force under the command of Field Marshal Albrecht, and yeah, we're going to address that in a moment. The other engagement was at Yemen. The assault came off. We took fairly heavy. It seems to be a feature of the war with the Yemenis that we do take fairly heavy casualties. I mean, we tend to take more casualties than we inflict. And we have combined arms and this sort of thing. We have a bit of cavalry and we've got some artillery and this sort of thing. But yeah, it's just a tough, kind of really tough insurgency. A real protracted fight that went over 3 rounds, and we destroyed a portion of their force, and we also took another artillery regiment from the Yemeni. So we're actually capturing all of their guns, which presumably are being made elsewhere, because I don't think they're being made in Yemen. So someone's probably providing them. But anyway, in the win column, we've now got a kind of nice contiguous territory linking Aden to Sana once again. And I think we'll hold in Sana for the time being. We'll deposit the force inside the town to kind of speed up its organisation and cohesion sort of regain. We've got some supplies for the time being, and we're now going to invest in some... we've got colonial merchants for another 14 turns. We need 6 turns for a trade post. We'll get a trade post set up, and we'll set up a military outpost, which will take 6 turns. It means that we're going to have to sort of stay in Sana and babysit that construction, really, until it's done. So the hope is they don't make any kind of crazy play for Aden. But we'll keep an eye on the situation anyway. It may be the case that I don't know what forces they have left. With Hadramut, we can see they have another column comprised of an additional field artillery regiment, and then just various mixed units, levies, regulars, this sort of thing. But yeah, decent development in our colonial conflict. But of course, this is where the big guns are up north. We've got the 2 divisions which are arriving in Constantinople. My thinking is these 2 infantry divisions now, we're going to use them as sort of almost like an enlarged garrison. We're going to place an infantry division in Smyrna and a one in Constantinople, I think. The reason being is because we've begun the training construction of another entire army corps, which will complete then this third army. This third army will then be comprised of 3 infantry corps, a cavalry division, all of the service assets units required, and some artillery support as well. So we'll break that into a proper command. Obviously, we will remove Riza Pasha. In fact, we could just remove Riza Pasha now, put him in command of the garrison. There we go, in command of the Constantinople garrison. So this is going to be commanded by Osman Pasha, the understudy of the late Khurshid Pasha, with Hussein Avni as a second. And then we've got Salim Pasha as a lieutenant general also, who will take command of one of the army corps. He's going to have to sit tight for the time being, wait for the completion of an additional corps. That is a conscript corps of kind of militia grade, so it won't take quite as much time. I should point out that in Abdülkerim's army, you can see that a lot of the elements have now been turned into regular units of these kind of militia corps, which is really good. And changes the sort of really kind of swings the balance in terms of it speeds them up when they're moving and this kind of thing. They're more effective in combat, their organisation is higher, and so on and so forth. There are some smaller Austrian units that broke through in Epirus and Albania. We're moving to deal with those. So we've got our own cavalry brigades. We're sending one towards Albania now, and we've got another one which was deposited in the fortress of Sofia that's going to head to Albania. And we have a kind of small garrison. It was a militia brigade, all that's been trained up into a regular force now in Larissa. We're going to send that into Epirus as well, just to make sure the rear is kind of consolidated and cleared up. The main fleet is back in the Aegean. I think we're going to send them back to Constantinople for the time being. But they served their purpose. They kind of escorted and screened the transport force coming from from Palestine. So we'll move the Imperial fleet back into Constantinople for a period of rest and sort of resupply and consolidation. We move the raiding fleet back also, incidentally, to Smyrna. We're going to keep them there for the time being, and we'll move them back out and conduct another kind of period of sort of raids looking to interdict Austrian maritime shipping in the Mediterranean. Back to the kind of the big fight then. Now these forces are not completely organised. You know, they have come at they've been engaged in some actions and this sort of thing. That said, there's two of them and they're both activated. So to that end, we're going to set them both to offensive posture, attack all out. 4 days for Omar, 7 days for Abdul Karim Nadir. That's okay. These are army-sized forces. We're moving nearly 200,000 men from Niš in Kosovo into the Zvornik Gap, where there is a large Austrian army comprised of Army Corps, very mixed forces, but I would probably suggest that that's easily 100, maybe 100 to 150,000 troops there. But we're well positioned now to engage that force, and we're going to behave aggressively. We've got force concentration. We've got our forces in place. They're not in bad shape. They're certainly good enough to fight, and that is just what they're going to do. And this presumably has to be the first really big kind of climactic Waterloo scale battle of the war with Austria. So anyway, we'll see if it happens. I'll flick through the other reports, see if there's anything else to note. I'd begun the construction of an additional rail network around Salonika, and I think once we're in a position to, the next stretch of railroad will be in Kavala, and that will mean that by this time next year, by sort of late summer, early October 1856, we will have linked Salonika to Constantinople, which is good in two ways. One, the tobacco belt, you get the big yield on the tobacco plantations. There's also cereals and fishing ports and this sort of thing. Increased production in Constantinople, of course, because of higher production efficiency. And also, we have a link for military units. We can strategically redeploy forces from Constantinople to Salonika, and they can be there within a day or two. Which really changes things. It means that we can sort of move forces closer to the front line from the center of power much quicker. And from Salonika, it's in good weather. It's like 10 to 15 days march from Salonika to Niš or Kosovo. So that's really good. It means we can get forces into play much quicker. And once we've got Omar Pasha and Abdul Karim Nadir in Zvornik, we're going to instantly release funds, manufactured goods and so on for a fortress and a depot at Zvornik, and we're going to kind of calcify and harden up the gap, and we're then also going to move towards Sarajevo and look to take Sarajevo. There are Austrian forces in Sarajevo. Let's have a look. These look like kind of militia, Innsbruck militia, very small force, also a supply train in Sarajevo also, and there's an additional force up here led by we don't know who. But these forces are divided. Actually, now I think if that force is based in, it's quite hard to identify where these forces are actually placed sometimes. There's a good chance that force could march to the sound of the guns, but anyway, I think at the very least then it'll be an even Stevens fight, and I fancy it. It's summer, it's relatively flat terrain. I think we're going to do it. That's it for our military moves. There's nothing else to report. We mentioned capturing the Field Artillery Regiment in Sana. Our economic administration, very quickly on the economy, exports are dropping off fairly significantly now. This may be because of the war. It may not be. It may just be a sort of, you have these kind of cycles. National market sales are relatively good. 64 units at 213. Imports sitting at 10 merchandises. That's steel. We're going to stop that actually. No, we'll keep it for one more fortnight, I think, steel imports. We like to top up our kind of steel production because steel is obviously important for laying railroads. So we'll keep imports for that commodity for the time being. That's pretty much it. Let's just check the economic admin, make sure everything's kind of set. I think all that looks fairly good. Yeah, Looks good enough. And let's just check out assets balance. Inflation sitting at 3%. Nothing to be too concerned or upset about there. Happy with that. War Ministry replacements. 30 for 69. I think that's okay for the time being. We'll keep that as it is because we've got a bit of a shortage of officers for the time being. Yeah, that's okay. 35, one conscript. I think we'll build some light ships. And we've got one currently in reserve for heavy ships. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, going to pop you on pause, past turn, and we'll be back in early October. I keep saying this, but I get the feeling that, we're on the cusp of some kind of great action for what's going to be a big engagement at Zvornik with the Austrian Field Marshal Albrecht. So, see you on the other side. Okay, so welcome back, early October, and we did indeed see a fairly significant battle in Zvornik. So, yeah, first big pitched battle between organized armies, and it was a victory. It really looks like our experience is kind of really paying off against all those technological advantages the Austrians have. 13,000 casualties on our part, 33 on theirs, plus we take 3,400 prisoners, and that is, a square victory, absolutely in the bag, and good news. That bodes well for a sort of more prolonged war against the Austrians. It wasn't all kind of honey and apples, however. We lost in our attempt to defeat the light cavalry brigade the Austrians had at Epirus or Janina, and our militia brigade or infantry brigade is falling back to Larissa. We've got two cavalry brigades moving in to Albania with a view of engaging with a view to engaging the Austrian cavalry brigade there. They have two cavalry brigades operating basically in kind of western Greece and Albania, and we don't want them to become too much of a nuisance, penetrate, disrupt supplies and logistics and that kind of thing, so we want to contain this and kind of deal with this. For the time being, we're going to sit tight in Zvornik just to reorganize, and we are going to begin the construction of a fortress there, which will cost us 65 state revenue, 21 manufactured goods, 10 steel. We have more than enough of that. That'll be and we'll also begin the construction of a depot, I think, which takes less time. Yeah, I think that's it. Let's have a quick look at the supply and logistics system. Yeah, it's for the most part good. So yeah, the construction of a fortress here, then a depot. Both of those simultaneously will provide us with a basis for kind of more serious operations into the Balkans. We don't want to overstretch ourselves, get ourselves in a tricky situation. But that was a really, really solid victory in the bag. Abdi Pasha is promotable. I think he's the leader of the Imperial Guard. For the time being, we're going to hold off on that. We don't really have necessarily an advantage in having another 3-star general, but he is promotable. What we are going to do, this force ultimately fell to the command of Hussein Avni because, of course, he received his promotion to 3-star general before Osman did, even though they both have a seniority of 15. So they're both 3-star generals, both at the same level in the pecking order, but Hussein Avni does have that kind of seniority. So he takes command of the 3rd Army, which is almost finished being constructed. We've added 2 infantry divisions. We'll pull those 2 infantry divisions out once they're in Salonika, and the additional army corps is kind of being completed. It will take, I guess, another sort of fortnight to another month in Smyrna, and then we'll move that up to Salonika to join with Hussein Avni's force, and that will then be a 3rd army. The importance of getting that secured there, of course, is if the Russians, if the Austrians decide to fly through Montenegro and head towards, Salonika and try and develop some sort of operation in our rear. We don't really want that happening. So we'll keep these boys here for the time being, and yeah, just look to kind of get them reorganized, build them up. They've got some supplies at the moment. They can draw supplies from Sofia, so there should be no kind of real problems or dramas there, and probably either late October, early November, we'll look to push to retake Sarajevo, and hopefully by then also we'll be in a position to move our third army up, and then once we have Sarajevo, we can begin to look at kind of operations possibly against the sort of frontier, really, the Austrian frontier. But we'll fall off that bridge when we come to it. So far, though, very good beginning to the war. Really, really good. Much less messy up than the kind of Crimean War. I think the experience against the Russians was really, really important in kind of focusing the mind, giving us kind of a clear understanding that we don't want a really messy war where they're besieging our forts endlessly and taking our depots and this sort of thing. So we've taken the fight to them. We got forced concentration really, really early on, and we're doing well. I mean, we've basically pushed them all the way back into Bosnia. This would have been a startling surprise for the Austrians, who probably expected a bit of a walkover and probably imagined that the Russian problems was just due to the fact that they're Russians. They're useless, they're hopeless, badly organized, terrible leadership, so on and so forth. The Austrians probably never imagined they'd have the same kind of problems, but in truth, their own push towards Salonika was filled with hubris. Really badly organized, really messy. And even against a properly organised field command in Zvornik, we gave them an absolute hiding and drubbing. So good news. It's developing really, really well. Let's have a look. Aden. Okay, right, yeah, so, yeah. That was predictable. That was always going to happen, I suppose. Let's have a look at the... it's not activated. We'll give... we'll give Zarif Pasha's force another fortnight, I think, in Sana to reorganise. He's not activated anyway, and then we'll look to move him south. The difficulty is drawing supplies, isn't it? 20 days, for Christ's sakes. The worry is once they block off Aden, you have these kind of supply issues. Anyway, yeah, that's it. Militarily, that's it. There are no other reports. There's nothing else that's too pressing. No kind of problems, no revolts, insurgencies, or anything like this. We know that Abdi Pasha is promotable. We'll hold off for that for now. That will be a consideration. Decent round economically, actually. Good domestic market sales, coming in at sort of 63 units of goods for 293. Even exports are picking up a little bit at 140. Now, one thing that we are starting to notice is the Austrians are a bit more proactive at sea than the Russians. They have their own raiding fleets. One, of all places, attacking our most recent merchant fleet that we sent to the Yellow Sea to try and sort of exploit the Chinese market. They inflicted 3 hits. Not serious damage, but there's Austrian raiders operating amazingly in the Pacific. And that wasn't the only case of raiding. Also raiding in where? The Indian Ocean. So they have raiders quite far afield. I mean, the age of sail, this did sort of happen much more. But yeah, some damage to our merchant ships. I think what we'll look to do actually is we'll go to the War Ministry. Now, merchant ships just require private finance, but we've got a bit of capital. I think we'll look to building 2 repair parts. It's about 200 capital for manufactured goods. Replacements are looking good. I think we'll put another unit of light warships. There we go. Let's just check our own raiding fleet. And let's just check our main fleet also. Yeah, so main fleet's back in port, getting some rest and resupply and so on. At some point, I'm going to consider a bit of an enlargement of the navy. It's not on the cards just yet, but let's have a look at the balance of power. The Austrians seem to have launched some ships. That might just be a temporary kind of combat. Basically, it's based on your combat value. And if our own fleet is tired, back in port, receiving sort of replacements and things like this, it kind of distorts these figures somewhat. We'll keep a careful eye on that, however. Yeah, okay. So, good round economically. Nothing on the diplomatic front. We did send a state visit to Montenegro. That was refused. Bit of a surprise. A small principality mortally endangered by the Austrians. You thought they might have leapt at the opportunity, but fine, okay. We've also sent diplomats to the UK, to Britain and France, just proposing a state visit, just looking to try and keep relations up. Whilst we have diplomats, it makes sense to use them. These are the two kind of powers that we're looking to try and maintain the most friendly relations with, really, Britain and France, for the time being, anyway, to try and sort of cultivate a bit of alliances. British ships passing through the Bosporus, I don't know what in aid of, but that's fine. They actually have transit rights in our territory. We've provided them with access rights. Nothing else to report in early October then. We're going to pass turn, and we'll see if the Austrians try and make a bit of a counter-attack. They may well do, they may not, but we'll keep our boys sitting tight for the time being. We'll get them sitting at hold at all costs, I think. And see you in late October. Okay, welcome back. Late October. Now, there has been a great battle at Zvornik. The Austrians, it looks like, attempted to push through under the command of Frederick von Liechtenstein, and engaged Omar Pasha and Abd Karim Nadir. It looks like Liechtenstein was supported by a reserve force stationed, I'm guessing, at Sava, but it was an absolutely colossal clash. 180, or just under 190,000 men apiece. We have superiority in guns, 890, they got 570, and it was a titanic battle. We won, took 25,000 casualties, inflicted 51,000, took 4,500 prisoners, and that's really good news. That's an exciting development. To know that we can defeat the Austrians in the field like this is really, really good news. I mean, the Russian war was essential, really, in providing our kind of boys with the experience required, of course, under the command of the legendary Omar Pasha. Who else could pull off a result like this? Sensational stuff, almost forced parity, really. We've got a slight advantage in guns, but that's it. Set to the defensive. We've now switched over to the offensive. We want to exploit this as best we can, so we've set both forces to offensive posture and to attack at all costs. And so there will be another great battle at Zvornik. But yeah, the biggest clash of the war so far, and an exciting development. Everything has basically been set. Economic administration has been set. We've expanded the strategic reserve ever so slightly. Also, we're investing in some light warship parts. But yeah, really, really good news. Let's set the raiding fleet to head back out to the Central Med to engage Austrian shipping there. Is there any Austrian shipping in the Central Med? That appears not. They've removed their merchants. Maybe we'll send the raiders elsewhere then. Where do the Austrians have... See, this looks like a raiding fleet up here. We'll send them to the Central Med anyway for the time being, just in case. I would have thought the Austrians would send merchants back there, maybe a temporary manoeuvre. They might be switching merchants out or something like that. Also, they can serve an escort role anyway if our own merchants are attacked, but we can't see anything in there at the moment. Curiously, the British have landed a force. They do have transit rights, and it appears they've got some fleets in Constantinople. Now, that's really interesting. Why that is the case, we don't know. They're not at war with Austria. They're not in a formal alliance with us. They did accept our request for a state visit. The French refused it. So, interesting. If they're intending to go to war with Austria, that'd be incredibly welcome. But the fact that they have deposited a force near the capital is, I would suggest, a source of comfort for us. The British are currently involved in some difficulties in their colony in India, so maybe it's just a stop-off point. Mind you, the Suez Canal is not yet open, so it wouldn't even be that, really, would it? I don't know. Anyway, a welcome development, not a problem at all. We provide them with transit rights if they want to stop a force off and deposit at Constantinople. Maybe as a gesture to the Austrians, that's fine by us. Yeah, nothing else to report on the military front. It was just that one big engagement. We don't get any national morale from it, so it's obviously not a complete action. The Austrian army is still in the field in the last analysis, and it is significant. But we are going to swing to the counter-offensive, try and make the most of that advantage, and see if we can't inflict another defeat on the Austrians. I'll pass turn, As I say, economic admin has been set, reasonable turn economically. Exports are remaining about the same at 120, and domestic market sales against same sort of I think 62 units of goods for 190 capital, and that's pretty decent. We're continuing to import steel, and with no major issues, no major economic disruption. The international markets have slackened off ever so slightly, but that's not a problem really. We're getting Osman. It seems to be switching command. I don't know why Osman has command of that force, because it should be Hussein Avni, given that they both have the same seniority, but Hussein Avni had his promotion first. Probably in the event of battle, it would go to Hussein Avni, I don't know. Anyway, that force is 4 days from Salonika. The additional army corps that's being constructed is almost complete. Once it is, that will be embarked and sent to Salonika to hook up with that force, and we'll have a third army, which will begin moving north towards the Zvornik Gap. With 3 armies in the field there, we will then begin to look at to kind of exploit that situation, because we would then have a really substantial force in play, and we might look to, we will look to press up towards Sarajevo, maybe besiege their force at Kataro, something like this, or conduct operations in the sort of Dalmatian coastline. So I'll pass turn, so we can get into early November, and we'll see the results of what will hopefully be the second or the third battle of Zvornik. So see you on the other side. Okay, so welcome back. Early November. Yeah, there was no great third battle at Zvornik. It looks like the Austrians retreated in good order, and they have concentrated their forces around Sarajevo now for a bit of security. It looks like they've brought their reserve force down, and they had everything, which I guess they were going to bring into play around Sarajevo to hold Sarajevo. For the time being, we're going to err on the side of caution. We won a pretty sensational victory at Zvornik, and I think we're going to hold tight, reorganize our forces, get this depot constructed and fortress, and also bring the third army up into play under Hussein Avni. Now, the additional army corps has been trained, fabricated. We don't have riverine points because it's a conscript one. Conscripts want to require slightly more riverine points. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because they actually have more men, and they use slightly more men to try and mitigate the fact that they're kind of poorly trained. But anyway, so we're going to bring down our heavy transport fleet with a river squadron also, and we're just going to use that to lift those boys over to Salonika, and we're going to detach a force from Hussein Avni. The one area we did have a battle was a small engagement with brigade-sized forces at Tirana, and these kind of cavalry brigades the Austrians have got are becoming a bit of a nuisance. So to that end, we're going to detach. Who should we detach? Osman. We'll give him the cavalry division. He has an entire division. That's absolutely more than sufficient. He's activated, and he's going to move around and deal with those kind of Austrian brigades in Albania that are making a nuisance of themselves, and that should be enough to destroy that brigade, hopefully, if it engages it. We'll sit tight in Salonika for the time being, and yeah, await the arrival of the additional corps, I think. In fact, we have 2 divisions there instead of a corps, so we have already 85,000 men. Actually, we're just going to press north, and that corps will bring up, but that corps will function as a sort of reserve force. We'll force march also. We can afford to do that. It's going to take a bit of time to get up there. Early November, autumn, winter is setting in. We're starting to see some dicey weather now. That'll slow things down. But we're going to sit tight in the Zvornik Gap. We've done what we wanted to do. We've managed to counter an Austrian, a general Austrian invasion of the Balkans. We've limited their kind of gains to Bosnia-Herzegovina for the time being. We've won a staggering victory in the field. We want to hold tight, consolidate our position, get a depot built, enlarge the depot, get some supply stocks in the area, and we'll then conduct operations and push north, take Sarajevo, start besieging Austrian cities, and start. With 3 armies, that's going to be like nearly 300,000. So, pretty much our entire field army, which we never had in the West against Russia. For most of the war against Russia, we had 1 army. We only started to developing a second army, which was very ad hoc towards the end of the war, and it wasn't really enough. If we had had 3 armies in the European theatre, it would have been a different game altogether. Of course, we would then have lost all of Eastern Anatolia, so that wasn't really an option with Russia. But anyway, yeah, a story of overwhelming success early on, really, against the Austrians, really heartening. And that, I mean, the two engagements at Zvornik have shown us that it can be done. Okay, they're a modern army, you know, they've got lots of kind of advantages that we don't, but the Russians didn't. But they are absolutely defeatable, and they're defeatable, you know, when you're fighting them with any kind of force parity as well. You know, we still have the great General Omar Pasha on our side, and he's going to be the most senior commander of the three commanders that will be here, preparing the invasion of Bosnia, basically, and the invasion of the Austrian Empire, which is what we plan to do. We're going to be moving for Sarajevo, the Dalmatian coastline, then we're going to look at some other targets, Zagreb, Budapest, and yeah, to try and really kind of humble the Austrian Empire. They thankfully also they haven't made any significant gains against the Italians. It looks like they took Savoy, but they're now kind of trapped. It looks like the Italians have retaken, or the Austrians have attempted to take Alessandria, Torino, and Savoy, and kind of sort of blitz through really Piedmont and take multiple kind of towns and cities. That has not come off, and they're now in a tricky situation. I don't know what size force they have in northern Italy, but yeah. They have a fairly sizable force here in Bosnia. That's a huge force. That's easily 200,000 now, I reckon. Many of those forces, of course, have just experienced a fairly significant defeat or require some time for replacements and such. But yeah, so far so good. I'll leave it there. Next video will pick up in late November, so it'll be a turn after this. I'll pass turn. I don't intend to conduct any other. The fleet's sorting, incidentally, into the Aegean. But I don't intend to conduct any other kind of military operations. We're going to sit on the defensive in Zvornik. Our force in Aden is not activated, but it's 2 days away from Taiz. It's going to sit tight then, regather some organisation and prepare to move south to Aden to lift the siege. And it's a kind of the never-ending story, really, isn't it? The kind of insurgency war. Again, the last engagement when we took Sana was a really, really nice battle. It was really a set piece. You know, we destroyed a number of their elements, of their kind of their regiments, and yeah, we want more of that really, because they will find it harder to replace their losses. Their losses are replaced on the basis of kind of rebellions, really, revolts. Yeah, that's how that's sort of how they build their forces really from the local population. But if we keep continuing to kind of continue to kind of defeat their forces in the field, destroy forces kind of wholesale, they'll find it hard to replace those losses. That's the hope anyway. That's a sideshow now. Obviously the real war is against Austria. That's where the big forces are, if you like, the big guns. So we'll leave it now. Leave it here for now, and yeah, see you in late November. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.